My name is Sally. I'm 42 years old and I'm an office worker. My husband George is 2 years older than me and was originally my senior at work. He was a good worker and I respected him a lot. We had a son right after we got married and had a happy family. However, the relationship between my husband and I started to fall apart at some point. It is no exaggeration to say that the cause of the breakdown was my husband's parents. My mother-in-law in particular did not like me from the beginning of our marriage. She was always picking on me in any way she could. However, my husband defended me in the beginning, and he used to be my senior at the same place of work. We used to live in a rural area far from my parents-in-law's house, so we managed to get by without seeing them most of the time. But when our son was about to enter high school, my husband got transferred, and that location was also where my in-laws lived. In addition, my husband's new workplace and my son's high school were close to my in-laws' house, so inevitably, we ended up living close to them. I resigned from the company when my husband got transferred, looked for a new job in the area where we were going to live, and changed the jobs. It was easier at this company than my previous one. Work finished in the evening and there was a little overtime. I can afford to make elaborate dinners and box lunches for my son and husband, but my mother-in-law often arrives at the same time as me, so every time this happens, it feels very difficult and stressful because she's a bit of a bully. Then, my parents-in-law planned a trip to a hot spring and invited me to join them. They said that they want to take me and my son on the trip. What do you think about this? When I asked my son this, he replied, "I can't go because I have camp with my club on the Saturday and Sunday after next." My son plays baseball, which he has wanted to continue since junior high, and the high school he entered had a strong baseball team. So they have a training camp every year from early in the year. I see. I guess it can be helped then.
What? Don't tell me you're going, Mom.
Yes, because I like hot springs.
Are you okay with that?
My son knows I'm being treated badly by my in-laws, and that even my husband has been treating me roughly lately. That's why he's worried I might get hurt in some way. Well, I will be fine, right? If something happens to me, then that's it. My son said, "All right," and seemed satisfied for the time being. And before I knew it, it was the day before the spa trip.
"Tomorrow, go rent a car and pick up Dad and Mom, and then come back."
My husband said this to me while watching TV. What? I'm going to rent a car, and what are you going to do?
I'm tired from work today, so I will sleep until the last minutes tomorrow. Why don't you pick them up and come back, and then I will join you. We're going to the same destination anyway.
My husband is always doing this these days. He puts me in charge of everything. I've been working all day and into the evening. I'm doing the housework on top of that. I'm also the one who prepared his lunch and the dinner he just ate. If anything, I think I'm more tired than he is. I've been picking up my father-in-law. He's just lazing around, making it sound as if he's the only one who is tired from working. When we were first married, he did about half the housework. When my son was younger, George took the lead in doing the housework and was really helpful. As our son got older, my husband's job's responsibility increased and he had less time for housework. But he still helped me clean the house on his days off. Sometimes he cooked for us. But after my in-laws started coming in and out of our house more often, my husband stopped doing housework completely. That is because my mother-in-law interferes. When my husband was doing the housework, she would say, "Why is George doing the housework? It's the wife's job." And she would stop him. "The breadwinner of the family should only do his job." Since she said this to him every time, he gradually got brainwashed and stopped doing the housework. And then he said,
"That's right. There's no need for me to do the housework. Why did you let me do it all this time?"
going as far as to blame me. And when it got to that point, it was beyond my control. And I don't think I can make it right now. My husband has changed drastically in the past few years. The reason he got transferred in the first place was because his job wasn't going so well. So he takes it out on me on a daily basis these days. But when I try to argue with him, he always tries to reason with me and never backs down. I've become so annoyed with him that I've decided to just let him be. It's the most stress-free way to live. I thought about divorce, but my son went to a private high school and the tuition was too expensive. And when I thought about putting him through college, I felt that being a single parent was too much of a challenge, so I couldn't go through with the divorce. I've come to think of my parents as an old man who is a bit of a pain in the butt, but I can bear with it as long as he gave some money. When I think in this way, I'd feel less stressed out. I thought that I didn't have to take quite a risk to get a divorce, so here we are. I joined this trip because it was a trip to a hot spring resort that I love, so I knew I could enjoy it even if I had to do it alone. And if I wanted, I could separate from my in-laws and my husband. Perhaps I'm thought of as a designated driver, but my husband and father-in-law can both drive, so what the heck? At any rate, I figured I shouldn't expect anything from my husband, so I went to get the rental car like he said, and went to pick up my in-laws. "Sally, aren't you a little late? What, that's the car you're driving today? Why didn't you get a bigger car?" "Well, it's better than your mini car." I usually use the mini car I bought myself. I commute to work by car, so I paid for it myself, assuming I would use it most of the time. I don't often go out for long distances, so I thought a mini car would be enough. And besides, I also like the interior and the color, so I bought it. And yet, my husband drives this without my permission, and also lets my in-laws ride it. My in-laws complained about the fact that it was a mini car, and they looked down on me, saying that I could only afford a small one. So I had to go out of my way to take a rental car for the trip. Then I thought, why don't we just take my father-in-law's car for the trip? He could drive up to our house and just drive to the spring resort would be the smoothest way. But my father-in-law said he doesn't do long drives and he doesn't want anyone else to drive his car. So for such a selfish reason, I rented a car and my husband and I drove. But in the end, my husband, who said he would switch with me on the way, was asleep the whole time, and so I drove all the way to the destination. While my husband was sleeping, my father-in-law still complained about my driving, saying things like,
"The best way is to go and stay in the right lane."
He would also tell me that I could have made a right turn when there was clearly oncoming traffic. And when I slow down because I know the light is going to turn red, he would say,
"Why didn't you go?"
It's really depressing. My mother-in-law, who does not have a driver's license, also joins in complaining about my driving. I don't want my mother-in-law, who can't even drive, to tell me what to do. And at least I'm better than my father-in-law, who has crashed his car at least 5 times, for real. I tell him he should return his license before he gets in a big accident, but he says,
"Don't treat me like an old geezer. I'm not to blame for all the accidents I've had."
He's still driving. Well, I didn't want to get in a car driven by my father-in-law, so I don't mind if I drive, but it's really distracting for me to have him interrupt me every single time. I mean, he leans over from the back seat and says this and that, so his spit flies into my hair and it's really disgusting. When we reach our destination, my husband finally wakes up.
Oh, that was surprisingly quick.
I was really annoyed at my husband saying such a thing in a casual manner. I was tired from being in the car all day, so I wanted to stay at an inn for the rest of the day and didn't go out with my parents-in-law. I went to the hot spring to wash my dirty hair and took a walk around the hotel by myself. And with that, I was able to make the most of my time. We all had dinner together and went back to the room. By the way, I was alone in the single room this trip, so my husband shared a room with his parents. There are a lot of things to be irritated about, but to tell the truth, I feel more comfortable this way. I still took my time in the hot spring and went back to the room. I had a beer and snacks from the store, watched TV, and had a relaxing time. I wonder if my son is having a nice meal with his baseball teammates at the cafeteria. Or is he talking or playing games in the shared room? I would probably get some messages or phone calls from my mother-in-law around this time, so I decided not to do anything. We would talk about how the trip went when we get home. Before I knew it, it was already midnight, so I got under the covers and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up with a very fresh air around me. Oh, how I wish I could have mornings like this all the time. It's still 2 hours until the breakfast time that my in-laws told me. It's only 6:30. It's become so ingrained in my body that I have to get up in time to make lunch. That's right. Since I'm here, I might as well take a hot bath. I went to the hot spring again and soaked in the water slowly. The weather was beautiful, so the open air bath was very pleasant. I went back to my room and called my son to let him know I was coming home this evening. As I recall, he said he would be back tonight, so depending on how the trip goes, I thought I might have to ask him to wait at home alone. I sent a message, packed my bags, put on my makeup, and since it was almost 8:30 a.m., I decided to go have breakfast. I was supposed to have breakfast with my in-laws, so I went to the room where the three of them were staying. But no matter how many times I knocked, there was no response. Maybe they had already gone ahead of me. I had no choice but to go to the breakfast room, but there was no sign of my in-laws. The breakfast room was not that big. If I went around to all the tables, I should be able to find them soon. I sent a message to my husband, but he didn't reply. I thought it was impossible, so when I went to the front desk to check, they told me that my husband and in-laws had already finished their breakfast and left. They told me breakfast was at 8:30, but in fact, the breakfast room was open an hour earlier than that. My in-laws and husband intentionally lied about the time, went to the trouble of telling me to start eating at 8:30 a.m., and that I was not supposed to come to the breakfast room early. Even more so, I was supposed to do the checkout. My mother-in-law told me, "We'll pay for your stay." Her words were a lie. I would have to pay for 2 rooms. Of course, I would not have a car. In short, my in-laws had planned to leave me behind and return home on their own. I was so pissed off, but in a way, it made me feel better. If you're going to do that, then I'm ready to do this. I went to the breakfast room with a refreshed mind and elegantly enjoyed the buffet breakfast. Well then, what should I do now? While I was thinking about that, I got a call from my mother-in-law. "Excuse me, where are you?" is what I said, and my mother-in-law started laughing. "I thought that since we were going on a vacation, we should enjoy spending time together as a family." "If that's the case, you didn't have to go to the trouble of leaving me here. Why didn't you just come with the 3 of you to begin with?" We only brought you along to pay for the car and the accommodation. But you still got to come to your favorite hot spring resort and have a nice meal, so you should be grateful. If that's the case, they all could have paid less if they'd just gone by themselves. Why should I go out of my way to pay for my husband and in-laws' accommodations? I'm so angry at my in-laws that all I can do is sigh. Well then, we'll just go sightseeing and go home first. Why don't you run back, Sally? I don't know how many days it would take though. My mother-in-law was laughing like a fool. As you can imagine, I don't like being told off like this. Is George driving? I told her to put me on speakerphone so he could hear me. Then my mother-in-law seems to have switched over, and I can hear my husband's voice.
What's up? What the hell do you want?
Were you going to leave me from the beginning?
Don't be so angry. You like the hot springs here, didn't you? Why don't you go relax by yourself today? But you have laundry to do, and John is coming home from training camp, so come home this evening and do your chores properly.
Hearing my husband's voice, who seemed so happy to make me obey him, there was no restraint in me anymore. What? You should at least do your own laundry.
Hey, don't act like that. I'm the head of the household. Even more so, I'm the one who is telling you to take it easy. Where normally, you should be the one crying and saying thank you, right?
That's so old-fashioned and lame, so you shouldn't do that.
What? You're so cocky. I will give you a lecture when I get back. Prepare yourself.
Oh, don't worry about my words, because today is the last time I'm going to see you.
Huh?
Both my husband and in-laws sounded surprised at the same time. Oh, I mean you're not even here today. Or should I say, I haven't even seen you today. So last night's dinner at the hotel was the last time, right? Haha.
What do you mean?
I heard my husband's upset voice, so I quickly responded. Because I'm divorcing you.
What?
You know, just about a year ago, you confronted me with divorce papers, right? My husband's attitude had changed since we moved in, but around this time last year, he was particularly cold. I couldn't stand it any longer, and when I questioned him about it, he suddenly got angry and confronted me with the divorce papers. I was upset at the time, and because I was concerned about our son's tuition fees and other things, I refused to divorce him. After that, my husband immediately said,
Please pretend that we never discussed divorce. I'm sorry for my emotional outburst.
So we decided to stay married, but there's no doubt that I harbored a great deal of distrust toward my husband. So I secretly hired a detective agency to investigate him. It seems that he was having an affair with a classmate from high school. They met again a little after we moved here, and she was a single mother with a daughter in middle school. I think he tried to leave me to be with the woman he was having an affair with, but he was probably turned down. He probably felt that it would be a disadvantage for him to leave me at that point and only pay child support and be single. Besides, if he had me to do the housework, he wouldn't have to do anything himself. In short, I was treated as a convenient housekeeper from then on. Well, I also got some money from him and treated him like an old man, so I guess it's the same. But I kept the evidence of the affair I'd gathered from the agency to use it as a bargaining chip if something happened. Even it was a past affair, it's only been a year, so I can get a divorce at your fault. As I said this, I heard the surprised voice of my father-in-law and mother-in-law over the speakerphone. It seems that they didn't think my husband was having an affair. Then I decided to say something else that surprised them even more. Just because you've been demoted and your salary has dropped dramatically, doesn't mean I'm not going to charge you alimony mercilessly. Again, I hear my in-laws' surprise. How could you be so arrogant when I make as much as you do? Even though I earn the same amount of money, I pack lunches for you and John. I clean the house and make dinner for you both, right? You got left behind and had a cushy job all the time, but you always talked about how tired you were and how you were the breadwinner of the family. I said things that hurt him more and more, and he became silent. I stayed married to you because I was thinking about our child's tuition and all that. But I did some research, and I found out that even if I became a single mother, my parents are willing to help, so I realized that I don't need you. Plus, you'd be paying alimony and child support, okay? I'd rather have a happy, stress-free life, even if it means losing a little bit of income. So I'm filing for divorce. Enjoy your day of sightseeing without me. My in-laws were calling my name in a panic, and George was stammering and about to say something, but I didn't care and hung up the phone. The bus to town was just about to arrive, so I got on the bus and went to the station, then took the train to my house. I was so relieved to be able to say all the things I wanted to say to my husband. So I had some lunch and a beer. I was able to catch the bus and the train at the right time, so I was home before evening. I was glad that my husband had confronted me with a complete one at that time. And while I was packing my things, my son came home.
Oh? Aren't you home early? I mean, just you?
When I told him what had happened, he scolded me lightly, saying, "I told you so."
But if you divorce him, I will stay with you.
My son didn't seem to be bothered by it. Well, he's a sophomore in high school, so I guess he somehow understood that my relationship with my husband was not good.
Well, I'm going to pack up my stuff.
John packed his bag quickly and efficiently, because I had called my parents to come and pick us up while I was still on the train. When my parents arrived by car, my son transported the heavy stuff into the trunk. That's what you'd expect from a baseball player. My husband doesn't exercise at all, so when we moved into the new house, he kept saying,
"Oh, it's heavy. It's so heavy,"
complaining about it and being so pathetic. In no time at all, my son and I finished loading our things and headed to my parents' house. In the meantime, I kept getting phone calls from my husband and in-laws. So after we had arrived and I calmed down a bit, I called them back.
"Finally, you picked up. Hey, why weren't you answering the phone?"
I can answer the phone whenever I want to, right?
Don't be ridiculous. I haven't even granted you a divorce yet.
Even if you say so, you and I are strangers now.
Huh?
I kept the divorce papers you confronted me with before, so I've filed them.
Oh no!
So all I have to do now is ask you for alimony and child support. Aside from that, I only need to go and talk to my lawyer about those.
Wait a minute! Sally, please reconsider. It's true I betrayed you once, but don't worry. You're all I see now. I will take care of you again.
I was so sickened by my husband's words that I almost threw up the lunch I ate. Just how weak-minded are you? I don't have a shred of love left in me for you. So why don't you try again with your mistress? If you try again with her, oh, but she's already remarried now, so maybe not. Haha.
Huh?
My husband was surprised to find out the truth. Apparently, even if he couldn't remarry, he thought that his mistress would still have feelings for him, even though they parted once. Why do men have such stupid ideas? I found out that his affair partner had remarried when I was filing for alimony. She told me that she would pay me alimony and asked me not to do anything to ruin her life. She also apologized for having the affair, so I decided to just get a larger amount of alimony. So it's fine no matter how much money I need to pay for my son's tuition. My husband also paid alimony and child support. George couldn't pay with his own savings or salary, so he asked his parents to pay in his stead. They didn't think their son would give them that kind of trouble. They were so shocked that they were bedridden for a while. Parental stupidity at its finest. But I was able to punish my in-laws too, so let's say it's a good thing. After that, everything was resolved and I moved into a rented apartment with my son. My son has grown up to be a good boy, just the same as he was. Today, I'm at his baseball game with my parents. My son looks so dignified when he stands in the batter's box, and he looks so cool and mature. The metal bat catches the ball with a "kang" sound, and my son gets a hit and scores a run. He raises his fist to his teammates on the base. As I thought about how I want to continue watching my son grow up and taking good care of him, I applauded John's success with joy.